Oh, those 20s roared. After the double and triple trauma of the teens, when World War I embroiled the globe in a conflict using weapons never before seen that caused untold psychological drama, and the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic, which infected nearly a third of the global population. The 20s were the party after the storm. People could never go home again, spiritually or culturally. There was even a song, "How you gonna keep them down on the farm after they've seen Paris?" It was a big hit because people's lives had been uprooted and impacted, and they couldn't go back to the past. The authors of this generation wrote extraordinary material. There was a cultural flowering as people told stories of journeys with triumph and tragedy, stories of the expansion of Western thinking and the problems therein. These 20s roared with a fervid party spirit and the cynicism born of collective trauma. So we're talking about the 1920s, of course, and now we are reaching the place in our Lenten series on the great American novel when we have arrived at The Great Gatsby. Published in 1925 by F. Scott Fitzgerald, this jazz-age novel encapsulated what many remember now about the 20s. A time of great social change, a time of new technologies and new freedoms. The stock market flourishes in the post-World War I climate of social realignment, and some people get really, really rich really, really fast. Women bob their hair. Automobiles become popularly available. You can make a telephone call by picking up a phone. It's a time of suffragism and the expansion of the rights primarily of white women, and simultaneously fearsome Jim Crow laws that perpetuate the anguish of the antebellum South in legal but unjust forms. Many of our great thought leaders of the time decamp for Paris. They escape the backlash against their new sophistication and their need for equity, only to encounter anti-communistic right-wing extremism rising in Eastern Europe. Virginia Woolf publishes Mrs. Dalloway the same year as The Great Gatsby. Babe Ruth is playing baseball and warming up to one of the greatest years in the history of baseball in 1927. Warner Brothers make their first films. And also, in that time period, same year as The Great Gatsby, off in Austria, a book called Mein Kampf is published by a young and hungry Adolf Hitler. History does repeat itself in some ways. And in some ways, we learn from our history and never, ever let it happen again. So I sort of wonder, if we come out of this pandemic, are we going to land in another jazz age? What's it really going to be like? I mean, I know some tactical things. Here at church, we're going to have new staff to bring fresh hope and vision to our reopening process. We're probably going to have fewer large gatherings and use our courtyard more than ever before. Thank goodness we have a beautiful courtyard. There are going to be some awkward things. Some things that we used to do pre-COVID are not going to translate into post-COVID. Some of our hobbies and habits, our customs, traditions may not totally translate forward and will have to be adapted. I suppose we could probably expect that people who've been through the things that we have been through are going to be a bit fragile in some ways. There may be hurt feelings that bubble up. Some social skills might be rusty. Um, there might be some disconnects that we are called to reconnect. These things are manageable. I mean, I know we can expect more people wearing yoga pants than high heels, and people are going to have their long, fluffy COVID hairstyles and funky beards to share as the regathering occurs. Will it be another jazz age? We might be sadder but wiser, a little cooler than we were before. But with 500,000 souls now missing from our nation's conversation about what it means to be American and where do we go from here, we might not need just jazz, but also the blues. What does it mean to be American in 2021? For so long, a white picket fence, whitewashed worldview dominated that conversation. We can't do that now. Shouldn't have done it then. We must learn the lessons of the past and do better now, having a multicultural, anti-racist, post-colonial conversation. For we are so aware that our global reputation as a nation stands in need of polishing. What does it mean to be American at this time? It means the opportunity to make new patterns and update worn thinking. But there will be the temptation to simply let our longing for the old days slide us back into the same old comfortable power plays and silent agreements about who matters and what matters. Black queer feminist, activist, and author Sonia Renee Taylor famously said this early in the pandemic. It bears repeating. She said, "We will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was never normal, other than we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. We should not long to return, my friends. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all of humanity and nature." That's Sonia Renee Taylor. Oh, this is such a powerful invitation to rewrite a new future. But that temptation will be there to dust away the past, to either let it control our vision or for us to fail to learn from it. And this is where The Great Gatsby is a bit of a cautionary tale. The main character is Jay Gatsby. Born in humble circumstances, he falls in love with Daisy, and they are separated by the war for 5 years, during which she gives up on him and she marries Tom, a wealthy man. But Jay never gives up. He reinvents himself and becomes very wealthy. Very wealthy. And what's partly famous about this book is that he throws these giant palatial parties in his elegant estate on the water. Jazz era parties. And the reason he throws them is he's hoping to relive the past and attract Daisy back into his life. This is not a tale of honor. This is not a tale of compassion. This is a tale of desperate imagination, of becoming something you wanted to be and finding out that the American dream does not keep its promises. Jay becomes fabulously wealthy to be the rich boy he thinks Daisy wants. And she is married Tom in haste and regrets in leisure. And terrible things happen, and there are painful consequences for the clash of illusions that occur in the novel. And ultimately, Daisy retreats into her wealth and privilege, and Tom pays the price for her careless and indecisive cowardice. Fitzgerald says this: "They were careless people, Tom and Daisy. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together and let other people clean up the mess they had made. F. Scott Fitzgerald would hear Louis Armstrong sing "What a Wonderful World," I'm pretty sure, and he would be like, "No, friend, it's not. The American dream is a sham. War leaves its mark forever, but hey, Satchmo, thanks for the jazz." Because, of course, they were contemporaries in the 20s. The past is stuck to Gatsby. No matter how hard he dreams into the future, dreams versus reality. The book is full of flickering light imagery. He looks out at the green light at the end of the dock at Daisy's property, surrounded by wealth and poverty. He dreams and dreams of a past to come into the present. He even changes his name to become the man he wants to be. But it does not bring happiness, and it does not bring love. And that brings us to the biblical heroes in our scriptural reading today. This Lent, we are so blessed with the great riches of Scripture in our lectionary readings. This passage is the establishment of the covenant between God and Abraham and Sarah, on which the whole narrative of the Hebrew Scriptures rest. This is the beginning of the great promise of "You shall be my people, and I shall be your God." And God promises the blessings of land and children to Sarah, age 90, and Abraham, age 100. But God promises, and God delivers. A new future is born. Abraham and Sarah do not change their names to evade the past. They change their names in order to cement their relationship with God and to become God's new people. They change their names to reflect that the acceptance of a new life and a new challenge has occurred. Great Gatsby, that jazz era hero, changes his name to erase his past while simultaneously wanting to relive the past in the present. So fulfillment evades him. Sarah and Abraham change their names to bring the future, and God's promises unfurl in their lives and in their children's lives and in their children's lives. What then would it be like to get a new name that liberates you from the past without obscuring the past and fulfills the promises of love and hope? Here's a question for discussion. Have you ever changed your name? If so, why? Under what circumstances? People have interesting stories about their names. You know, my spouse is Mark. Mark and I changed our legal last name when we got married, and we decided to keep using our, quote, maiden names in ministry. We were ordained with those names, and we also did so to combat misogyny. And this has turned out to be more necessary than either of us would have ever predicted. And I know that in working with our Samoan United Church of Christ friends, I have learned about a whole new cultural system, new to me, let me be clear, new to me system of naming. The Reverend Dr. Misi Tangaloa of the Second Congregational Church of Long Beach, UCC, right up the street that way, we were in a great conversation one time, and he said to me, "You know, Elena, in your culture, name and identity, those things stay static. You're always Elena Larssen. But in mine," he said, "your identity changes when you attain new responsibility in your culture. You receive a new name." Wouldn't it be wonderful if that sort of Abrahamic dynamic were more pervasive? That when we attain new levels of responsibility in life, we receive a name to reflect the dignity of our commitments. In my culture, I had to hide my new responsibilities to try and defend my new family against pink taxes and social penalties. There wasn't room in my name to be both an accomplished professional and a married woman, let alone a mom. I can only imagine how much worse it could have been. I still count myself among the lucky. But I know there is room for change ahead. In this 2021, we should not resist being changed by the times, stretching our names to include new identities, new responsibilities, new awareness. There is too great an opportunity for justice. The past is our teacher, but it is not our guide. There come times when we have to decide how we're going to relate to the past, present, and future. And Gatsby's tale warns us of false promises from false gods of wealth and popularity. This book warns us that you can try to go back into the past, but you cannot relive the past in the present. You know, the hedonism of the 20s, the extreme wealth of a few, and the cultural flowering I described, we may yet see more of this in our 2020s. But living in the present doesn't mean living like there is no tomorrow. Staying alert and aware in today is a spiritual challenge, and the promises of God invite us to fall in love with our future, imagining days ahead that will not only be a balm to our weary souls, but refresh us with new paths to making a better world. So I leave you with a question. What new names describe who you are becoming through this pandemic experience? What new names describe who you will be in 2021? Baker of bread. That's one. I know I'm in that group. Champion of sea turtles. Who saw that clip of sea turtles being released back into nature after they had been rescued from the cold ocean? My heart went up like a balloon when I saw that. What other new names? At-home worker, anti-commuter, masker, anti-masker, minimalist, practicer of Sabbath, at-home yogi, disinfection specialist, anti-racist. Yes, you can take that name and work to live into it. Spanish speaker, blogger, reader, gardener, meditator. These are the things that you are telling me that you are becoming through this transformational aspect of the pandemic. Yes, there are lots of new names for the new people we are becoming by virtue of this time of great change. What new names can describe who you can become in 2021? Here's one, friends. Comes straight from the heart. Please let one of your names be pandemic survivor. Please take that name and do all in your power to live up to it. For the time has come for the past to be our teacher, for the present to be our spiritual home, and for us to fall in love with our future. We are all taking on new names by virtue of living in these times. But don't take on those names like Gatsby, chasing a broken American dream of the past, but instead like Father Abraham and Mother Sarah. Let us take on new names, new parts of our identity in order to accept God's promise of enduring love and faithfulness. This is how we will become who we are meant to be. And this is how we will make such a wonderful world. May it be so.